Hi everyone, my name is Chelsea. Welcome to Little Mountain Ranch. I'm happy to have you here with me today. I am going to be spending the next couple of hours out in the garden and I can hardly wait. I was canning all weekend long and I am done with being in the kitchen for at least a couple of days, certainly done with doing canning. Hi Maple, how's it going, honey? How are you? You're such a good girl. The garden is hitting that wild jungle phase where everything is kind of getting a little overgrown. We have some harvesting to do down here, some patty pan squash. We have some pickling cucumbers to harvest. We have, oh my goodness, some cabbages it looks like. We have a whole bunch of celery to harvest. My giant red acre cabbages are looking lovely, but I did notice down here that the outer layer of this one has split. So I think I'm going to err on the side of caution and actually harvest this one just so that I don't risk losing it to a big split down there. You can absolutely still use split cabbage. I wonder if I can show you what a split cabbage looks like, because I'm sure I have some in here, or at least one in here. Look at these collard greens. Don't they look magnificent? I actually think I'll harvest a bunch of those too and get those blanched and frozen. But let's see if I can find you a split cabbage to show you what I mean. I am pretty sure, oh yes. This is a split cabbage. This one split over a week ago. So when it's freshly split, you can definitely take it and it's not gonna have a bunch of dirt and grossness in between the leaves. At this stage, it's definitely animal feed. Here's an example of one that just split. You can see this. So this one I probably will give to the pigs just because it has so much dirt in it, and that dirt has, as you can see, gotten down inside of it. But I think in a couple of videos ago, I showed you a split one that had just split overnight that I was absolutely able to take up to the house and wash up and use. These ones right here, I definitely wouldn't. I'm gonna take a wander down here. So we have patty pan squash, we have some cabbages to pick, we have pickling cucumbers to pick, and we have some beautiful dill that we can pick for making some dill pickles with our pickling cucumbers. Our onions are definitely getting close. We have some nice big leeks that we can pick over here. This leek is bolting. I'm just gonna snap that off. And I think I'm gonna get the sprinkler down here and actually give these a bit of a water first before I pick them. I have a few beets over here as well that I think we might pull out of the ground. Let's get started and see where we get to. I have a whole bunch of this bok choy over here that I left to flower for the bees. The bees absolutely love this stuff, but it's pretty much done now. And I have some seed pods. All of these right here are all seed pods. These guys over here that are dry are actually mature. Let me show you. I have paint on my hands because I was painting the basement. So you can see the little tiny seeds in there. Those are the bok choy seeds. So I will harvest a couple of these pods off of here, but the rest of this we can get all ripped out. Wow, I can't believe how much the garden has changed in the last couple of days. It really feels like an autumn garden now. Here's our sweet alyssum. Remember, we cut this right back, and I did get another little flush of it. It smells so beautiful. The chamomile is definitely done for the year, so I can rip that out. Okay, before we find our wheelbarrow, let's take a quick jaunt down to the high tunnel and see what needs to be taken care of in here. Such a jungle this year, good grief. Lots of beautiful green tomatoes, red tomatoes. Look at those. Okay, so we have to come down here and pick some tomatoes as well. That's exciting. Look at that beauty. Oh my goodness. Ooh, lots starting to turn kind of color over here. Look at that one. That's beautiful. Some sun golds, so many tomatoes, look at that. Definitely need to do a little tomato harvest down here. I think there might be enough to start a batch of something. I know I said I wasn't gonna can, but maybe one batch. One batch wouldn't hurt. All right, enough wandering around. Let's get to work. Oh, sorry, one more thing. Look at this. Isn't that a beauty? Just gorgeous. So interestingly, I had a really good harvest for about 2 weeks with my zucchinis, and then it basically just stopped. And even now, just 2 zucchinis off of these 2 plants. And I think of all of the years of growing zucchinis, this is probably the slowest zucchini harvest I've ever had. Let's move on to pickling cucumbers. I planted some zinnia in amongst my pickling cucumbers. I'm so glad I did. Look at that beautiful one. How lovely. I have very much been slacking on harvesting pickling cucumbers because it wasn't a great year for pickling cucumbers. I kind of got out of the mode of checking every single day, and we have some massive ones like this one here that are way past maturity. But it would be nice if I could get enough to do 1 batch of dill pickles today. Laughing at myself because I keep saying that I don't want to can, and then twice now already I have said, oh, I'll just go in and can this up. This is a volunteer nasturtium in underneath these big sunflowers. All of the flowers in here outside of the zinnia are all volunteers. So a volunteer is a plant that grew from a seed that was dropped the previous year, either by me or by a plant that was planted here and then grew up. I love volunteers because it's always such a surprise. Like this whole area here, all these beautiful nasturtiums and these big, beautiful sunflowers made one of my favorite parts in the whole garden, and I didn't plant these here. I love it. I think I'm going to be making some sandwich style pickles with these ones because they're all pretty big. Oh, you know what else I want to check is the green beans. See if we have any green beans we can harvest. I ended up running up to the house and then got occupied with some in-house tasks for the last hour and came back outside to find that the smoke had rolled in. I'll show you when we get down to the garden. And it's so bad. So I'm going to try to get this harvesting that I need to get done in the garden done as quickly as possible. It's crazy how fast the smoke can roll in like this. I'm not sure if you can tell how bad it is, but it's really thick. I can smell it in the air. It's funny how as soon as I walk into my garden, I instantly feel calm. So we'll grab this beauty. Look at that. Beautiful. Now we'll head over to our beans. We ended up getting a little bit more frost in here, it looks like. Some more patty pans ready in here. And we have these little lemon cucumbers. So in Australia and New Zealand, from what I've been able to tell from you guys, these are called apple cucumbers, which makes sense. And here they're called lemon cucumbers. And picking them when they're small and they haven't quite turned yellow like this is when they're best. I really like these though for a snacking cucumber. These are delicious. Okay, this situation is extreme. So this is supposed to be my bean patch, but last time I checked, there were not very many actual beans on these plants. So let's go in here and see. Be nice if we could do some dilly beans in with our dill pickles because we're not going to have a full batch of dill pickles to do. Okay, we're getting a few here, so this is encouraging. Good grief, what a mess. Oh, you know, if I had actually maintained this bed properly, I probably would have ended up with a decent harvest for how small this patch is anyway. Okay, we did get enough for a little batch of beans, so that's good. Now let's get some celery. Okay, so I'm cutting this off right at the bottom like that. Look at how beautiful that is. Pull these little guys off here. And we're probably not going to have enough time this year to get a second harvest, but you can cut your celery off, and if you have a long enough season, this will actually grow another head again. So I think we'll grab a bunch. So one of the tricks to growing nice tender celery is to not let it dry out. When it dries out, it tends to get a little bit woody and not nearly as nice and tender as it does when you water well. So my plan is to freeze dry all this celery and freeze dry the tops for soup stock. Celery is one of those plants that you have to plan ahead with. So you need to start your seeds in February. They take a long time to germinate and they are very slow growing, but I think totally worth it and relatively easy to grow. This is only my second year growing celery and it has done fabulously well. Really happy with it. I have 8 trays that I can fill. For my freeze dryer, I only have a 4-drawer, like a medium-sized Harvest Right freeze dryer, and but I do have 2 sets of trays, so I can fill 8 up at one time. This little patch here was actually a surplus patch, extra celery that I had planted. My main patch of celery, look at how tall that is. My main patch of celery is over that way. So might as well just clear this patch right out. It's going to be a ton of celery. But this part of the garden is pretty much done for the year. So then I can clean it out and prep my beds for winter. I was going to do a little bit of bed prep today, but with this smoke, I do not want to be outside, especially not doing any work that involves any kind of deep breathing like digging. Well, I think that'll definitely do us. When we went to the fruit stand the other day, for those of you that are in BC, it's Desert Hills and Ashcroft that I'm talking about. We also bought a lot of peppers because my peppers weren't great in my high tunnel. They're actually doing really well now. I'll show you in a second. But I did buy a box of those, so I want to get those chopped up and probably just freeze those. Peppers freeze really well, just chopped up. You don't have to blanch them or anything. So I think we'll do that too. Let's grab some of this absolutely beautiful collards. Look at those. So the plan will be just to wash these and blanch them and freeze them. These ones have been nibbled on by cabbage moth worms. I just picked myself a whole bunch of work, but I am not complaining. So now down to the high tunnel to grab all of the ripe tomatoes down there. I made a tomato sauce for dinner last night that was so good. I chopped up a bunch of Roma tomatoes, cooked them down all day. Then I added some fresh basil, some oregano, couple chopped onions, couple bulbs of garlic. What else did I put in there? Balsamic vinegar. I think that's it. And it was so good. It was super, super simple, but so rich in flavor. It was amazing. Look at those cuties. It's gonna be time to get all these out of here pretty quick. Well, that's not too shabby so far. These tomatoes, oh my goodness, so beautiful. Note to self, don't forget your harvesting apron when coming down to the high tunnel. Let's get this up to the house and out of the smoke and do some processing. Let's check our apples and see what they taste like. I feel like they could use a little bit more time. Let's give it a try. Oh, yes, definitely a little bit more time. Woo. All right, friends, we are back in the house now. I have our tomatoes laid out here looking gorgeous. Look at that one. And this beautiful old German. This is one of my favorite varieties of tomato. But my plan with these, because they have such amazing flavor, is to cook these down a little bit and can them up, and I'm going to mark them as mixed tomatoes from my high tunnel, and I'm going to use them for our tomato soup that we like to make in the wintertime with our canned tomatoes. So in my last video I showed you how we do that with fresh tomatoes, but it is far superior with a mix of gorgeous homegrown tomatoes like this. So I'm going to reserve these tomatoes for that. Once I get enough jars of this in the pantry, I will move over and start making some other things with these tomatoes. In the sink back over here, I have 1 sink full of the green beans. I'm gonna go through them because some of them are over mature. Separate those out. We're going to make some dilly beans with those. And then I have peppers in the sink over here. The sink is filled with peppers, and this bin over here is filled with red peppers. So we're gonna get these ones washed, and then I am going to chop those up and freeze them. I am going to be blanching my collard greens, so I have some water going in the stove over there, on the stove over there for blanching the collard greens. And once we have all of this stuff out of the kitchen, we'll move on to getting the celery washed and chopped and put on the freeze dryer trays. But first things first, I'm gonna cut into this gorgeous tomato and eat a slice of it. Look at that. Isn't that so beautiful? It's super light and acidic, whereas this one, which I can't remember the name of at this moment, but it has purple shoulders on it, is more of a sweet tomato. Just red inside. Oh, so good. Oh my word. Okay, where should I start here, my friends? What would be the best place to start? I think because my water is actually already hot and ready to go over here, I'm going to grab all of those big giant leaves from out on the porch, get them washed and chopped. I had lots of questions about the cost for canning tomatoes the other day and whether it was worth it for me to can them from a financial perspective. It certainly is when I am growing my own tomatoes, but we were able to get the tomatoes that I bought for 60 cents a pound, and that's in Canadian dollars, which is a really good price for tomatoes for us. Last year was actually quite a bit more expensive. A quart jar will hold around 2 to 3 pounds of tomatoes. So that worked out to around $1.80 per jar of actual tomato product. The lids are around 38 cents a piece for the 4 jars lids that I use. And this was just all kind of rough calculations based on the prices that I'm currently paying today at the end of August 2023. And the jars themselves, I have all of my own jars that I've had for years. So I paid for them a long time ago, so it's free for me at this point. But if you were to go buy jars right now, it's about $14.99 a dozen for jars, again, Canadian dollars, which works out to about $1.24. And then I used some lemon juice. It's about $2 for a bottle of lemon juice. And a bottle lasted me for I could probably figure out the exact math on this because it's 2 tablespoons of lemon juice per quart of tomatoes. But I want to say a bottle lasted me for probably 24 jars of tomatoes. So the price or the cost of the tomato juice is really negligible. And then salt is also fairly inexpensive, although right now I don't know if you guys have been looking to try to find any pickling salt or kosher salt or anything like that, but at least in our town it is pretty well impossible to find right now. But again, the price is pretty reasonable for the teaspoon of salt that you need. All in, it costs around $3 a quart to can. And that's not, of course, taking in my work at all. The tomatoes that I grow are organic. For me to buy organic tomatoes obviously costs a lot more money, at least it does in our area. The tomatoes that I bought from that, maybe let's not use that leaf. The tomatoes that I bought the other day were not organic, but they were field grown tomatoes. Look what's on my deck. Can you see? There are sheep on my deck. Ladies, excuse me, this is new. Come on, scooch, scooch. Nope, nope, this way. Off the deck, come on. Get going, out you go. Okay, I need to go put the sheep back. I'll be back with you in a minute. I recently purchased a solar charger and fencing for the sheep so they can be out on pasture, because the one that I did buy in the spring that I wanted for them, we actually used for our meat birds and our turkeys, which has worked fantastic, but we still haven't processed our turkeys yet. So I bought another one for the sheep. I just have not got it set up yet. So they have been free ranging around, and I guess I forgot to close the gate when I came back into the yard, and they decided to come up and say hello. They're so sweet. They just make me happy. We're actually going to be heading down to the farm where we got these sheep from and getting a ram a little bit later on this week so that we can have babies in the springtime. So I'll show you what I'm doing with these leaves. So I am cutting down the spine and removing this. Okay, so a little bit of a change of plans when it comes to washing these. It's going to be a lot easier for me to wash them when they're all cut up nice and small like this than trying to wash those big giant leaves. So I am just getting them all cut up, removing the spines and cutting them into small pieces, cutting off anything that is nibbled on by the cabbage moth caterpillars. Bring that out to the cows, they'll like that. I'm gonna go plunk this in the sink. All right, now we're gonna throw all of our collards in here, blanch them down. It always surprises me how much greens cook down. Let me show you. Boiled down to this. To be fair, we did cut all of the ribs off, and there was quite a few leaves that were munched on. Oh, I missed a couple leaves. Okay friends, I need some collard green recipes. Outside of just having steamed collard greens with butter, I am not super experienced with collard greens. So for those of you that are, how do you eat them? What is the best way to eat them so that I can give it a try? Try some new recipes. Cool them off. You have to blanch collards for longer than you do for most other greens because they're pretty fibrous. Ziploc bags. I just close them up most of the way. Put a straw inside. You've probably seen this done before. But I could get out my vacuum sealer, but just for 3 bags, I'll just do it this way. It works almost as well. We got 3 bags of them. Get those put into the freezer. Next up, we will get our tomatoes chopped up and put in the pot back behind us. These tomatoes are pretty much spotlessly clean already, but I'm just going to give them a quick rinse off. This is going to make the most delicious tomato soup. So this tomato soup that I shared in my last video was super simple. So just tomatoes, garlic, onion, butter, pureed up, and then with cream added. Very, very simple with a little bit of salt and pepper. But you can also roast peppers and add roasted peppers into it, which is delicious. A friend of mine does squash in with her tomato soup, which I can imagine would be really, really good as well. You could roast your tomatoes and roast your garlic and roast your onions before you made your tomato soup, and it would definitely richen up that flavor quite a bit. A pot of homegrown tomatoes. Now I think we'll get on to doing the dilly beans and the dill pickles that we're gonna do. It's not gonna be a huge batch, but hopefully at least a canner full. Also, I think I might have overestimated the amount of celery that I needed. Oh my goodness. I did order a new roaster oven. My old roaster oven bit the dust, and I would have really loved to have had it when I was processing all those tomatoes the other day. But I did order another one because it's going to be super convenient for doing these smaller loads that are coming in from the high tunnel, because you can just throw your tomatoes in there and slow cook them all night long. This is going to make a nice little batch of dill pickles. I'm going to have to run down to the garden again and get some dill. I'm going to give these a scrub. There's an enzyme on the flower end of the pickle that can make your pickles less crispy if you keep them in. So I'm going to do some like this, the big ones. So on these ones that have a lot of seeds in them, I am just trimming that part off and keeping the firmer part. We're actually going to get a few jars out of this, so that's awesome. Let's run down to the garden. My wagon is starting to empty, so that feels good. Canning little batches like this feels very manageable. Forest garden looking lovely. Big, beautiful elderflower. Look at that. Echinacea, bee balm, just lovely. Raspberries are finally done. We could probably still find a few raspberries on there, but that was the longest raspberry harvest we have ever had. It lasted all summer. Look at this lovely dill. Gonna guess we're probably going to have maybe 6 jars. But we also have the dilly beans too, so we'll grab a lot. I still have this whole patch of celery yet to pick. I think I might be giving away celery this year. My goodness. The prep work is now done for our dilly beans. We have our washed and chopped dilly beans, so the ends, both ends are chopped off. I have some washed jars here with the garlic clove in the bottom of each jar. We have our pickles chopped up over here. I have peppers chopped on the cutting board over there, and all of that big pile of celery that's there just has the ends cut off. I still have to go and actually chop it up, but that will take no time at all. Our tomatoes are cooking down on the pot, and I have our brine. The brine is 1 part water, 1 part vinegar. I did a mix of white and apple cider vinegar, and then 1 tablespoon of sugar or honey for every 2 cups of liquid. So I have 12 cups of brine over there that I'm going to be using for this. I have some red pepper flakes, mustard seed, our beautiful dill. So now comes the fun part where we get to put everything together. So I'm going to put a dill flower in each one. I didn't have a ton of leaves on these dill plants, but these flowers that have turned into seed here impart quite a nice flavor. And we're gonna put our pickles, our cut cucumbers, in our jars. I am salivating. I love dill pickles so much. I'm gonna put our lemon cucumbers shoved in the top here where we have a little bit of extra space. There we go. If you wanted to have these as refrigerator pickles, you could just take a jar of them, and rather than run them through your canner, I'm going to be steam canning these today, you can just put them in your fridge. Do leave them for a couple weeks though for the flavors to develop, and then you can eat them up. Now for our dilly beans, we're going to put a little shake of mustard seed in there. Pinch of red pepper flakes. Now we shall top off our pickles with our delicious smelling brine. Oh, I totally forgot to mention about using my steam canner on my propane burner outside. It actually required quite a bit of supervision because the water boiled away a lot faster, especially because I was doing product that took a lot longer to can than I'm used to using my steam canner for. Normally I'm using my steam canner for things that take maximum of 20 minutes to process, and the water doesn't boil away in that period of time. So if you do use it for longer things, do keep in mind that you do need to keep your eye on it. I am probably going to need more brine than I made. You have probably seen lots of pickle recipes that don't have very long processing times in order to keep the pickles nice and crisp. So the thing to keep in mind if you are going to process your pickles for less time than 10 minutes is you must sterilize your jars, your lids, get it all super clean and sterilized, because the sterilization process of actually canning for 10 minutes, that does sterilize everything. And if you're not going to do that, then you want to make sure these lids are sticking together. If you're not going to do that, then you want to make sure that everything is sterilized. So I always do that. I always make sure that I can them for 10 minutes. I need one more lid because that way then there's no question about it. My steam canner is on the stove over there getting heated up. I need to find some rings now for these jars. After we get these guys into the canner over here, we'll be able to just finish chopping everything over there and getting it into the freezer and into the freeze dryer. So all in all, lots of chopping, which can be kind of time consuming, but relatively easy stuff to preserve today. Okay, you know what? I could probably just get my pot. Do I have a tall pot? I do. 3 jars in that are left to can after this batch is done. So I'm actually just gonna use my pasta pot over there to can these. So if you don't have a canner, you can absolutely use a stock pot, a large pasta pot like that. Just make sure that you put something in the bottom so that your jars aren't resting right on the bottom of your stock pot, otherwise they can get too hot and end up cracking. So what I always do is take a few canning lids and I put them this way down all over the bottom, and then I just set my jars on top of that. I'll show you when we do that. So now let's bag up. Wow, this mess has gotten seriously out of control. Look at it, it's everywhere. Kind of par for the course this time of year. Look at these pretty rainbow peppers. So I use peppers like this for Mexican salad, for chicken fajitas, for chili, And this is so super convenient because I just put the amount that I'll usually throw in one recipe in a bag, and then it's ready to go. I think I'll probably need to get some more peppers. Oh, you know what? I forgot to show you the peppers down in the high tunnel. I had meant to, because they are all of a sudden growing. I don't know what happened. I don't know why they took so long to get going, because it's actually been fairly hot for most of the summer once we got over that cold spring that we had. But either way, I might get enough peppers out of there to top off these ones in the freezer. I bought these ones at Desert Hills at the fruit stand. It's not really a fruit stand, it's actually like a fruit and vegetable market. It's fabulous, and they usually have really good deals there. It's a great alternative to growing your own food, actually. I'll make this all neat and tidy when we're done so I can show you everything all laid out. But we have peppers bagged up. Now I'm gonna go over here and chop the celery. So this should be super duper easy to chop up. Cut ends off. Okay, let me show you what I ended up with. We have our pickles, our dilly beans, and our dill pickle spears. We have our collard greens, peppers, and all of the celery. That is a lot of celery, isn't it? I am going to go get 4 of these trays into the freezer. All of this food that's bagged up into the freezer. The jars that just came out of the canner are going to sit there until they are cooled down, and I'm going to put a batch into the freeze dryer. Generally, I would freeze these first, but since I have 2 sets of or 2 loads worth, I'm just going to pop them in and the freeze dryer will freeze them. What else? I think that is about it. Now, all I have to do is clean up this huge mess that I've created in my kitchen. But I am happy because we are just going to have pierogies for dinner tonight, which is really, really easy. We'll fry them up with some onions and cheese and have sour cream and stuff with them. Probably some cut up veggies with them as well. So that is an easy dinner. So I'm glad I don't have to cook anything major tonight. I hope that you enjoyed today's video, everyone, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.